Great, well, thank you and welcome everyone to the Salta School District Board of Trustees meeting. I'd like to call this regular meeting to order. A recording and our broadcast of this meeting is being made at the direction of, and the recording and our broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. I will now take the roll.
Here.
Steve Taglio.
Here.
Jessica Spicer. Here. Brian Johnson.
Here.
And I, Rachel Serki, am here as well. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. On to agenda approval. Would any board members like to provide comment on tonight's agenda? Okay, then may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I so move.
Thank you, Jessica. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Motion to approve tonight's agenda as presented was made by Jessica and seconded by Steve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Closed session report. No action was taken in closed session tonight. Superintendent's update, Mr. Barrett.
Yeah, just a couple of items. One, last weekend were the walkathons at our schools. I know many of you knew that and were at various events. 4 of our schools had them this year. They were pretty well attended. Just doing the eye check. But congratulations to was Loyola, Oak, Springer, and Gardner Bullets who had them. Also, just letting you know, parent-teacher conferences are happening between now and Thanksgiving. Really trying to make those as convenient as possible for parents to get to, and getting to them early with information about their students and their progress and what's going well and goal setting. And big thanks to our teachers who are in the throes of that right now. So looking forward to that. And just a reminder, I know I think all of you or at least have been able to watch the Bullish Charter School lottery preference that was on the agenda. So just letting you know about that. I'm sure you were aware, but just making sure. That's it.
And Jeff, if any of our public, our parents want to hear a recording of that, it's on the county
It
board
is. It's on the
website.
county website. It's up. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. On to our consent agenda. Would any board members like to provide comment on tonight's consent agenda? Then may I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I so move.
Thank you, Jessica. May I please have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Motion to approve tonight's consent agenda as presented was made by Jessica and seconded by Steve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Motion passes unanimously. On to employee requests to address the board. Los Altos Teachers Association. Welcome, Kate Scrimerhorn.
Hi, good evening. Today on campus, it really felt like we were feeling that first taste of our fall weather with the wind and the hints of the rain. And with that in mind, we want to just express our appreciation to LASD as we head into the winter season for providing those flu shots for staff members at the district office earlier this month. It was convenient and easy to get to, and just adds a little bit more peace of mind as we head into our winter and late fall time together. We also had some good feedback from teachers that they really appreciated the time at the minimum day recently. Very valuable to as you know, with teachers, we always love having our time. So it was very valuable and appreciated to be able to structure our day, work with our team members, and prepare for instruction. And as Jeff mentioned, those upcoming conferences. So we are getting ready and in the middle of those conferences to converse with our families around student progress And once again, we do appreciate the flexible model that we currently have. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Kate. And I think we don't have anyone from the California School Employees Association. So,
Don't see anyone, no.
okay. All right, on to our next agenda item. To provide public comment on an agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Requests received after public comment begins will not be accepted. This time is reserved for citizens and employees to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board is not permitted to discuss or take action on non-agenda items, except to instruct the superintendent to review the matter further, report back to the board at a subsequent meeting, or place the matter on a future agenda. The board may make a brief comment or ask clarifying questions. And I'll just wait a few seconds to see if anybody raises their hands. Okay, I see no hands raised, so public comment is closed. On to our action and discussion items. First, we have our pool testing update. Mr. Bear will present an update on pool testing in response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, thank you and good evening again. Wanted just to bring the board an update on what is happening with pool testing that we implemented in the district. Back in September, we started that. First, a chart you're familiar with. These are the positive cases we have seen, both student and adult, through, it says October 11. That's actually October 18 now. We had one case last week, student case last week. But as we have experienced throughout the pandemic, we have had positive cases. We haven't had a spread in our schools, which is really what we're looking for with the implementation of our protocols. Just information on where the county is in terms of case rate. This is the chart from last week, end of last week. 135 cases on a 7-day rolling average. We are still on a downward trajectory from the surge we had there in September, August, September. I do think of note, always important to point out that even with that surge, it was nothing like what we experienced, nothing close to what we experienced in January and February of this calendar year. Much higher number of cases, but we have done well through both of those. This is one you have seen recently as well. This is the case rate by vaccination status, and again, the unvaccinated are definitely still having a much higher case count than those who are unvaccinated. Even our case rate for 11 and younger is much lower, even being in school. So we know that, well, let me wait because I think it might be the slide. So a little bit about pool testing and what's going on. You know that we are partnering again with Concentric, is the name of the organization. They're Boston-based. And we partnered with them last year. We continued this year. Our testing began on September 20th at our school sites. We have a participation rate between 77 and 93%. There's some variance between schools. The principals are working hard and school staff are working hard to get as many people as possible participating in the pool testing. I will tell you that what we have found is as there have been positive cases on campus and families either need to go off-site or stay on-site in order to test whether or not they have given consent on the response testing. That has certainly gotten more families to sign up for the convenience. And we're a little bit higher than that at junior high school right now. We're in the mid 60% now at the junior high school. So far, we have had 2 positive pool tests, right? The rest of the cases have been brought to us from outside the pool testing, right? Because parents can't test at home, right? This is actually preferred if their child's feeling a little bit off, they keep their child at home, and if it persists, they get a COVID test, and then we find out that it's a positive, that there is a positive. But so far, we've had 2 positive tests through pool and 1 indeterminate test where it was unable to be detected. So we just we response tested all of those situations, both the positives and the indeterminate. The indeterminate came up with no one. We have been able to identify the 2 positives or the positives out of the pool testing. So the response testing has worked effectively. And there was only 1 positive. That's what that bullet means. No additional positives from follow-up testing. That there was just 1 positive in each of those pools, right? Which is good.
So no spread.
Right, exactly. More evidence of that. Staff is not going to be included in the pool testing, but they are going to be included in the response testing. There are, as we kind of projected this out, the many possible scenarios, our nurses are very good at this now. There is always a chance in pool testing that with the response testing the next day or the 2 days after, that you will not identify the positive. That's possible because the pool testing is a PCR test, which is more sensitive than the response testing, which is an antigen test. And should staff members be in that pool test and we can't find a positive, they are going to have to also be quarantined until we identify who the positive is, because it could be that vaccinated adult, the teacher, right? So we don't want that to happen. Additionally, vaccinated adults there is no recommendation to do surveillance testing on them, right? Because it's only if they're symptomatic that they need to get a test. So what we're doing, how we're providing that testing measure for our staff is if a pool comes back positive, then we are having the staff associated with that classroom participate in the response testing. Right, both the immediate if they want to, and then the 1 5 days out, right? 5 days after. The 1 5 days after is the only one recommended, but we're allowing them to do both, just for that peace of mind that they haven't tested positive. We also have a partnership with Mount View Los Altos Union High School District, where we do have PCR testing available each day at both high schools for students and staff and families if there is a response testing. That's kind of our pool testing in a nutshell there. It is proceeding pretty smoothly now, right? Everyone understands how to do this. So when it happens on the school sites, either on, I think it's Monday or Tuesday. Sandra, is that right?
Yep.
Monday or Tuesday is when the pools are done. It's a pretty smooth process now. And again, more students jumping on each week. Wanted to also, this has recently been announced, and this is a vaccine requirement that is on the horizon. And this isn't affecting us yet, but we know it's going to at the latest next school year. So the governor has announced that California will add COVID-19 vaccination as a required vaccination for both students and adults, right? And this is public and private school. He put kind of 2 dates in place. One is January 1st, 2022. The second is July 1st, 2022. And how he has explained it is that as the FDA approves vaccine, right, and fully approves, not just the emergency use authorization, but gives full approval to vaccines, if it happens before January 1, then January 1 will be the date by which a vaccination is required. If that full authorization is given after January 1st, July 1 will be the date that it is required. And that third bullet down there, this includes a requirement for staff who must be vaccinated once the rule is in effect for the first student age group. So whichever student age group comes first with the full authorization, in all likelihood, this will be the 12 to 17-year-olds, right? When that becomes required, that at the same time, the staff vaccination will be mandatory, right? So they're going to be the first group. We know also that this is just an aside that's not on there, but but Pfizer has submitted to the FDA the 5 through 11-year-old vaccine trials, and the FDA meets on October 26th, which is next week, to consider that. We hope it's a quick approval, so we can begin to have that available for our 5 to 11-year-olds. Just as a reference point, over 90% of our eligible students and staff are fully vaccinated right now, right? And we have more people coming on as time goes by. And we're still tracking down our junior high school students. We have a large number of them identified through the California Immunization Library, where their names are submitted, but not all are in there. So there's some handwork that has to be done now. But it's a high number of students and staff in our district, which we are grateful for. We'll keep you posted as this starts moving, as the vaccine for the 12 to 17-year-olds becomes fully approved. That will have an effect on us as an organization. So with that, happy to answer any questions about what's happening with any of those right now.
Thank you, Jeff. Members of the public, if you'd like to make public comment, please start raising your hands now. Are there any clarifying questions? Vladimir?
If you go back to the slide that has COVID-19 testing in the state, the last bullet there says that PCR testing is available at the high schools for staff, students, and members. Does that mean for LASD staff as well as MPLA staff?
And Mountain View Wisconsin.
So anybody essentially in our district can get tested.
For response testing.
Okay, so the second question I have is, what's the difference between response testing and pool testing and
Right.
Symptomatic testing.
Yeah.
systematic?
So one type of surveillance testing, right? And surveillance testing is just surveilling a group of people to find out if COVID is present in this case. One type of surveillance testing is what we're doing, pool testing, right? That pool testing could result, and the pool testing we do is for asymptomatic individuals, because if individuals in our organization are symptomatic, they should be at home, right? So this is testing for asymptomatic individuals to check to see if there is COVID present, right? Because we know that even asymptomatic individuals can be infected, right? So
It's a pool as opposed to an individual.
right, in the pool, right? So the way the pool works, I know we've been through this, but 15 kids in a class will swab and put their swabs into a single test tube. That'll be sent off, tested. We get response back in about 36 hours. And what it will tell us is either, yes, there's someone positive in there, or no, there's no one positive. If we get a yes, then we need to find out who the individual is. So as soon as we find that out, the next day, the next morning, we are ready to response test them. So it's testing in response to a COVID positive pool. We're ready to response test them with a test, right? So that's all asymptomatic testing, right? And this is to identify who is positive, right? What's that?
This year, or what you were talking about?
What I was talking about,
Okay.
right? So we also have students notify us that they're positive outside of the pool testing. In fact, as I said earlier, most of our positives come from outside pool testing, outside of the pool testing test. When that happens, we being our fantastic nursing staff, we need to do contact tracing to understand who's a close contact to that positive. Once that is done, and those kids and adults have been identified, if they're not vaccinated, they need to do a response test also. But we're not doing that on campus because Concentric only responds to and does a response testing to those that come from the pool, right? So those people who are close contacts, still asymptomatic though, right, need to have a place to go. They can go to their own healthcare provider. El Camino Hospital already also has tests, and our partnership with MBLA allows for that response testing to take place at the high schools.
Will MBLA turn you away if you're not part of the response group?
I think the answer is yes to that.
And symptomatic testing, that's the responsibility of the people who are symptomatic to get there.
Yes, that is done through a healthcare provider. Right?
Thanks.
Just a quick question. Are we requiring PCR tests versus antigen tests?
I think for the response test, the response test we're giving is an antigen test on campus.
Mhm.
Do you know the answer to
So I
that? for
think it
those
can be either as long as it's been done by a
healthcare
professional,
provider?
not like a home test.
Right,
Yes.
right.
We're
Okay.
not allowing for that home test because
Okay.
of the lack of
Right.
ability to it.
That's actually good for our families to know. No. Okay, any other clarifying questions, Jessica?
I have two. One based on Vladimir's question. MBLA testing, is that, do you have to schedule it or you just show up?
There's a website we give to schedule.
Okay. And that's from the same sheet. You said that the staff can participate in the response testing. So an elementary classroom pool is test positive. I definitely assume that the teacher for the general education teacher, say they had music or whatever, is it all the teachers that
Yep.
touch them?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's a may. They don't have to,
Okay.
right? Because the state guidelines are that if it's a vaccinated person, if they're asymptomatic,
Mhm.
they don't need to test.
But if they want to, it makes them feel better. They have the
Absolutely.
ability. Okay.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Looks like we have one person, Brooke, for public comment. Brooke can have 3 minutes.
But I just wanted to say thank you to the district for providing the pooled testing. We have had a couple of cases identified at Springer that were completely asymptomatic, and we wouldn't have found it otherwise. So it's super heartwarming and just peaceful to know that we have that testing in there every week so that we can find these cases and mitigate any spread. So thank you so much for providing that.
Thanks, Brooke. Okay. Public comment is now closed. Board discussion, would any board members like to provide comment on this agenda? Good, Brian.
I just had one other question for Jeff, because I think you had mentioned it previously. Once the FDA is given emergency use authority for 5 to 11-year-olds, is there any planning with the districts or local healthcare providers about providing vaccination clinics for our kids?
Yeah, so that discussion is going on right now. That planning is going on right now to do similar to what we did with the 11. There was the dates here, 12 to 17-year-olds. There were a couple of them offered locally right with the high school and at Egan. So we're working on that as well. The one, I think the one, I wouldn't call it a hiccup in that, but one consideration that is being really looked at is that feedback has been given in that particular age group. There is much greater comfort in going to the pediatrician for that than to, show up in a mobile van and get it there. So they will be available. They are anticipating that the participation might be lighter at the centrally located events.
As a parent, I think I would go wherever the workshop's available.
Yep.
And if the pediatrician didn't have it.
Yep.
Oh, any other? Yes, Vladimir.
I just wanted to make a comment that the vaccinated case rate in Santa Clara County is 1 out of 20,000. And the unvaccinated case rate is 4 times that. 1 out of 20,000 is pretty low. 4 out of 20,000 is still low, but it is 4 times higher than vaccinated.
Yep. And I always like to remind our, as I speak to our parents about this and our staff about this, and remembering we are a piece of Santa Clara County up here in this northwest portion. This is a highly vaccinated area, right? Los Altos Hills, Palo Alto, Mountain View, highly vaccinated. So it's great that so many people in our community, really taking that seriously.
I tried to look for the case rate for the 5 to 11-year-olds on the county website. I couldn't find it. Just wondering, is that something that's available? I mean, I can call them, but I just thought I'd poke around.
It might be available in their.
Because that's for,
It might be available in their data table.
okay,
Yeah, I mean, in the table on this picture, yeah, it's the purple one.
purple.
The
Oh my
purple
God.
is the
Oh, because
one-
they're unvaccinated.
Yes.
Right. Oh, I see. I was just curious
Yes.
about that age group 5 to 12. Okay.
So it's what?
It's about the same as the overall rate.
Yeah.
Okay. Clearly, I need my glasses to read. some
No,
of
it's hard to
that. You can look up here. Okay, all right, thank you. All right, let's move on. Spring alternate assessment update. Mrs. Leach will present an updated look at the spring alternate assessment results, including disaggregation by special population of students. Mrs. Leach.
Hi there.
Hi.
Long time no see. I was busy being the virtual school principal last year, so I did not see any of you in this capacity. It's nice to be back and hopefully give you some good news and a good look at what's going on in the school district these days. The data that you saw from Sandra, that was like a preview of the spring data, was that May, somewhere around there? Actually, it hasn't changed that much. The numbers are still pretty much the same. I wanted to just kind of tell you, like, so we gave the iReady and we gave MDTP. iReady is an adaptive computerized test, right? MDTP is a readiness test, a math readiness test that we give to our kids. These two assessments, right, were in place of the CASP assessment because we were not giving the CASP assessment last year. And the state allowed us to make that change, and we could give those particular assessments instead of the CASP. With that said, they're very different assessments in terms of what their function is, right, and how we look at the data for them. This year, we'll return to CASP. It is a modified CASP test this year. We're still in this the pandemic and this COVID thing, so it'll be a modified CASP test. But let's take a look at the data and you know what's going on. So our 3rd through 8th graders took iReady for reading ELA, and so we'll start there. 86. Oh, let me make sure you understand how to read it, so you know what you're looking at here, right? If you see green or blue, the kids that are in green or blue, those kids are at on grade level. They are considered to be on grade level students. Okay, the ones in yellow would be 1 year below. Any kid in yellow would be 1 year below. Orange would be 2 years below. And then red is going to be 3 or more years below. So when you take a look at this, 86% of our kids are 3rd through 8th graders or on or above grade level at this point. We had 9% that were 1 grade level below, and you can read all those things there. The number of kids is in parentheses for you to see what we did. In terms of ELA, I went back to look at all of our CASP data. Like, so what does this look like? Because we're trying to figure out, right, do we have a learning loss issue going on? We've just spent 18 months in a pandemic. We've had virtual school. We've had hybrid school. We then came back in April where they were 5 days a week. And so what does all this mean? If you go back and you look at the CASP testing, these numbers are similar to what we've seen. So for ELA, in general, overall, right, we're pretty much where we've always been. So if you look here, this is all the grade levels that were tested, and it is out of order. Data zone, for whatever reason, that's where I capture all this, doesn't have them in order of 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. So you have to really look at the numbers down there if they're out of order. But just in general, just like look at the blue and the green. That's how I'm looking at this. I look at the blue and the green and I'm like, okay, this is pretty good across the grade levels. I would say 3rd grade, just so you know, was at 94% at or above 3rd grade. 4th grade was at 86. 5th grade was at 83. 6th grade was at 82. 7th grade was at 86. 8th grade was at 86 at or above. Those are pretty much the numbers that we see consistently year to year. It doesn't mean we don't have any kids that we need to support or do work with, but just in general, it's pretty consistent. English language learners, let's take a look at them. So we are required to, since we did this alternative assessment to the CASP, we actually have to look at our subgroups, like CASP looks at the subgroups, right? That's part of the work that we have to do. Keeping in mind that our English language learners we had 38% of them at or above grade level. Remember that if they're English language learners, they're just learning to read generally in English. So it's not surprising that I would see 29% of those kids 1 year below. On our fifth. So those 38% kids, like this, my takeaway from this is, so 38% of them, or 53 of them, are ready to be reclassified. So they're no longer English language learners, right? So you'll see the numbers are there for the number of students for each one, in terms of 1 year below, 2 year below, or 3 year below. I'll talk a little bit more about like what we're doing about that, but we're able to know by name, by student, who fits into each one of those categories, because iReady gives us that information, right? We know by name who they are. So this was by grade level, where we were in English language learners and who was doing what. The good news for me in this is when I look at third grade, I see a lot of blue and a lot of green, which tells me that our third graders who are English language learners, we're going to have quite a few that may be eligible for reclassification. When I look over at the sixth grade, or excuse me, the eighth grade column, you see the eighth grade column's way on the end, right? What I need you to know about that, because it looks like, wow, that's a whole lot of students going on right there. When you look at that and you see, what is that, 89%, that's 9 students total that are in that category altogether. So yes, we do need to be concerned about the learning of all of our students. I would never say we're not, but we also have to remember, what are we talking about in terms of numbers of students that we're looking at. So ELA, real good in third. Got some work to do in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Those are probably more than likely our LTELs.
Could be our LTELs, they could be newcomers, or they didn't start with us in kindergarten, but they've only been here a few years or a year. So that's when we work with principals and go deep into the student specific data to make sure that we understand the story for each student. Right? If they're a long-term English learner, are they getting some intervention? If they're a brand new student, are they making progress? And do we see that they're making progress as they go through our program?
Right. And some of our, our newest and English language learners, are seen by the EL specialist. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in terms of conversation and learning English and all those things. The next category that we look at and need to look at is our students with disability. So in this case, we have 54% of our kids who are at or above grade level in ELA, which is actually a pretty consistent number too. We do have 24% below, 11, 2 or more, 11, 3 or more. So this is generally all of our students with disabilities. This is by grade level. What I found so fascinating by this is look what happens by the time we get to 8th grade. I think that's a positive sign of our teaching and the things that are going on, right? We are moving those kids that are in red. If you take a look, and they are, by the time they get to 8th grade, they're not in that 3 or more years of behind in that. Our students with economic disadvantage. So this is a category. So that is required for us to take a look at. And if we look at this category, we have total students that we have are 158 that fall into this category. And so 48% of them at or above. And then we have 19, 18, and 15. So this is at my grade level. And I know one of the questions that you asked Sandra when she was presenting the data originally was, do we have kids that are falling across all three categories of SPED, English language learners, and students with economic disadvantage? That was a question that you wanted to know. In fact, we have 10 students in the district in grades 3 through 8 that fall into that category, where they're in all three categories. And those 10 students, after you dive into the data, are actually performing in the 1 to 3 or more years, below. So once again, I would tell you, we know who those kids are. We know them by name. I'm confident in saying that we have interventions going on for these kids, and we'll talk a little bit about that when I get towards the presentation. So iReady Math was given to just 3rd and 4th graders this year. 5th through 8th took the MDTP. So in math overall, 87% of our kids were at or above grade level. Same ballpark as I've seen in the CAP for years. That's what usually happens here. There was less than 1% of our kids in grades 3 and 4 that were 3 or more years below. So you can see how many kids, 2% 2 years, 11% 1 year. This is a total of 750 students that took this. So iReady by math, just so you can see how we did in 3rd and 4th grade. 3rd grade was rocking it out last year, I'm telling you right now. They really were. Virtual school, they had quite a good number of kids. They were in the 90% of at or above. But you can see even in the 3rd and 4th grade, right? Good number of kids, 86% at or above. They're both about the same, 10, and 11% 1 grade below. And that 2 and 3 grade levels below, smaller numbers are going on in there. English language learners overall for math. Remember, in this case, math isn't just math. There was reading involved in math. So, but even with that being said, at 60% of them scoring at or above grade level, I'm pretty pleased by that number. And 2, there were only 2 students that were 3 or more years below in this. English language learners by grade, just so you can see by grade level what that looked like. You'll notice that in 3rd grade there was no one in red.
What is the purple? 7?
I think the purple became red.
Yeah.
The data zone, it's,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
or the red became
And
purple.
purple.
Okay.
And then this is our students with disabilities for this. So 45% were at or above. There were 4 students that are 2 or more grade levels below. This is all consistent with what we see every year. And then I just gave you for you to look at by grade, students with disabilities in math, so you could see what that looked like. This is our students with economic disadvantage in math. About 45% of them. Right? What we're talking about here, the total number of students is 54. Idea of what that looks like. And this is it by grade level, so you can see. So MDTP it's not a new test to us. We've been actually giving it, but this was the math test that we decided to give all of our kids for this testing. And this presented when Sandra did the presentation in May. We had some real like granular data around how kids were doing, and you might have remembered saying like there were critical levels that they had to meet and all kinds of things. We tried to figure out how we could quantify this for you so it would make sense of what you were looking at. So in 5th and 6th grade, 82% of our kids were above or met the readiness standard. This test, it's a test that indicates whether or not they're ready for the next grade level course. So 82% were above or met, 14 were approaching the readiness standard. They may have missed a critical level, in one of those levels or 2 critical levels, but they're approaching the readiness standard. And then less than 1% did not meet the readiness standard. So they did pretty well in 5th and 6th grade around the MDTP. In 7th and 8th grade, this was where we were at. 81% were above or met, and 14 were approaching, and 4% didn't meet the standard. I think for 7th and 8th grade, the important thing to note here is their math classes were all virtual last year, all year long. They came to school, but they were looking on a screen because their classes were via their math classes were via,
Yeah.
So I mean, for me, I look at this and I think we did pretty well since they were all in math, pretty much virtual all of last year. So really the takeaways from this is a couple of things. When looking at all the CASP data, our subgroups who we have usually had problems, there have been problems with them meeting the standard and exceeding the standard. Some of those same subgroups are still visible for us, but in general, there's no surprises. The data is the same. I would say that there doesn't appear to be a learning loss for students in this pandemic year. It doesn't mean that everybody's, level at everybody's right exactly where they should be, but they're not a year below, and they're not losing ground, which is how usually learning loss is defined. What we have done this year, and that's that next bullet, is this district-wide intervention system. This took a lot of coordination and a lot of work to really look at the data for the kids, and actually each school has set up an entire intervention system for reading and for math, and those kids are identified on the spreadsheet. The coordinators in the curriculum office, along with Clara Griffin, is providing that data support for principals to be looking at all this data. The interventions are actually up and running. So those kids that we identified initially through this data, and then subsequently through some other assessments that we gave at the beginning of the year, have been targeted for interventions. Families have been sent letters saying, we want to support your child. This is the program. Some of them are before school and after school. Some of them, in the case of Santa Rita and Almond, are actually within the school day. They have an actual intervention teacher. And this data has allowed us to be able to jump on this much earlier than we would have ever been able to do in the past. So those kids that you see that didn't need, we know who they are. And not only is there the interventions after school, before school, and the intervention teachers, but we now have tier 2 instructional support. That's strategies and things that teachers do within their classroom in small group. There's actually a PD around that, so the teachers know what they're looking for and how to support kids. the teaching staff was trained on all the reading interventions as well as the math curriculum at our PD. And all the supports that go on for math as well in the PD. And so I'm, you know, I know a lot of other school districts are not in this boat. And a lot of districts in Santa Clara County are not in this boat. Their kids did not fare as well. And part of that was our own ability to plan ahead and to really think about what we were going to need to do for students. So not bad. Not bad for an 18-month pandemic.
For sure. Wow, thank you, Ms. Lee. Members of the public, you may start raising your hands if you want to make public comment. Board members, do any of you have clarifying questions?
What is early on grade level? What does that mean?
So it means in the iReady world, if you're early on grade level or that green box, they consider that to be a grade level student. And because the test is adaptive, there's a couple of things that go on. When the test is adaptive, you're looking at questions that will be different than if they would have taken this assessment, say in September. The way this system works, it builds on, I don't know how to describe this.
They give like a span
Yeah.
of on grade level, but they're all on grade
Grade
level and you're either early, mid or above. Because you're early grade level at the end of the year doesn't mean you're behind in grade level. If that makes sense.
That does, I know.
I know.
It's just the way that they label or categorize, I should say, the kids as they're taking tests.
Any other clarifying? I just wanted to reconfirm for myself, the 8th graders, the ELLs, the 9 of them who are in the red, because they're gonna go on to high school next year, but they are known, I mean, I know that they're known too, but do we know what their stories? Are they new to the district?
Those students were 8th graders last year. They
Oh,
are
so they're
actually at
high
high school. Yeah, and through our articulation with both assessment scores and EL information, they should be well equipped to be getting their services if they still require EL services at the high school.
Okay. Are there any requests for public comment? I don't see any hands raised. So I'm going to close public comment. Board members, would any of you like to provide comment on this agenda item? Gladly.
Maybe I'm too pessimistic, or maybe I look to see the downside of everything as opposed to the upside of everything. But taking those 9 students there at English language learners in 8th grade who went on to high school, if they're 3 or more grade levels behind them in high school, they're not going to be successful in high school. That's my guess. They're simply not going to be successful. And that really bothers me. If I look at just in general, I'm left with some sense of that we're not doing as well as we could. We're not where I would like us to be, essentially, which is having everybody at grade level or above grade level. And I know that for English language learners, it's going to be very hard because if you come in from outside and you speak Spanish, or if you speak Mandarin, you're going to have a hard time no matter what. So I can't expect 100% at grade level or above. And I'm willing to sort of like take back, allow for those who come in not speaking English course, they're not really good. And, you know, I just, I don't know.
I guess what I would say to you is that when I'm looking at this, I look at this from a point of view of, we just got done being 18 months in a pandemic. We spent a good, from March to what, September, March, and then the start of the school year in a virtual situation where every kid was in virtual school, every kid was getting lessons, you know, through the computer and whatever. Then we brought kids back, but that wasn't even full time. That was 2 days a week, 3 days they were, you know, at home in virtual lessons. I mean, we did things, we meaning this district did things that other districts didn't do. I mean, there are districts that never came back at all. And so the kids have gone through some really interesting times in terms of their learning, right? A lot of it virtual, some of it in class. Eventually they came 5 days a week, but that wasn't until April. So for me, I look at this data and I say, so what does this mean when we're teaching kids in the way that we were forced to teach kids? I mean, if we had had our druthers, none of this would have ever happened, and we would have had all the kids in class with us, and this would have been the best thing. I look at this and I think to myself, boy, this is pretty good considering what our kids were doing and how they were learning. Is it perfect, Vladimir? No. But I think one of the things that we did learn and one of the things that we did take away from this was the necessity to create an intervention system, knowing that we were going to have kids that
Not
were
where we wanted them to be.
not where we wanted
Yeah.
them to be, that we were going to have to create this system to support kids after 18 months of what I consider a very non-traditional school. So I hear you. I mean, I understand. I mean, I look at the numbers too, and I would love to see everybody at or above mark.
And that's, I'll just jump in, I'll say that, that's always our goal, right?
Yeah.
To do better than we're doing. We're doing better than, you know, 99% of the districts in the state of California. Do we want to do better? Absolutely,
Oh, yeah.
right? We want to serve every child. What we know is that we did as well as we typically do, right? Our students did as well as they typically do, right? And we know that means that there's still, you know, 12 to 15% of our kids that we want to do better than they're doing, right? And I think if we get into perhaps at a future staff meeting, talking about some of those interventions we have in place, right?
Yeah.
The systematic approach that we have in place
Yeah.
for not just kids at the earliest grade levels, which you didn't even see on here,
Right.
right? The TKK 1 and 2s, right? They weren't included in any of those numbers. You'll see some of the just-in-time interventions that are being put into place, and not just at those grade levels, but what about the 5th grader who
Right.
still doesn't have grasp on early reading skills, right? We need to do something about that. And so I think hearing a bit about that will shed some light on what we're doing.
I think that would be really helpful to know what interventions we're doing. I do appreciate all of our teachers or staff. They're kind of thinking ahead while they're in the midst of this pandemic. I mean, it's an understatement to say that it was a rough time for everybody, you know? So if I can ask you to speculate,
Sure.
because I'm thinking to myself, it was a mentally stressful time for students. First they're at home, then they're here, there's, you know, the death rates are going all over the place. Do you think maybe part of what this reflects is that maybe our students were not emotionally ready to learn? I mean, I think it's very hard sometimes when you're like stressed out too.
They actually did learn.
They actually did learn. And
So that's what I found reassuring.
I mean, that's how I'm looking at this. And I would tell you that, you know, this doesn't reflect, you know, this is the academic portion of this world, right? And for a large majority of kids, I'm not going to say all because it's not all, but for a large majority of our kids, they did learn, and they did learn the standards and the content that they were supposed to learn. We are now in the midst of, and this is why we have this, the SEL curriculum, and we're going through all this stuff with all of our kids and the social emotional learning, because no matter how you look at this, their world has been changed, right? They have gone from a structured, very structured setting in class, and then all of a sudden they weren't in school anymore. Then they were on the computer. Then, I mean, all these different things that were going on. And we're having to retrain them now, right, to come back to school. If you think about what's gone on, right?
Yeah.
If you were in virtual school and you were 2 days in school and 3 days off, in those 3 days, when I was on my computer with my teacher, I could get up and walk around and grab a snack, and I could, listen from a distance, and I could do all these things. Well, now I'm coming back to school. Oh, well, I can't go out to my refrigerator and get a snack anymore, and I can't really, so there's a lot of like relearning that has to go on, and all kinds of different things. So it's not just the academic part of this.
Yeah, I think it's generally a slower start we're having this year to get through teach students, because we want to make sure that they are at that space where they're ready to learn, right? We're seeing their behaviors. We have our great chat program coming in and allowing students to process the pandemic, by the way, while we're still living in the pandemic. I think sharing with you all kind of what our fall plan has been, our collection of data, our putting together of our systems, our support for schools, our training for teachers and our paraprofessionals would be really helpful for you to see. And we're even at the point right now where we're doing some progress monitoring for the students who are in those more intensive interventions to see the progress that they're making and whether or not it's the right
Thrilled
intervention.
by some of the things
And
that we're
it's
seeing.
amazing to see. And we do, this is what we had hoped and were planning for as the pandemic hit, right? It has been our goal to really address that 15% gap, never forgetting the students who also need to extend beyond, because they're also on our radar. But we've got, sidetracked, but we have that plan in place now earlier than it has ever been. It was really our goal to get things up and running as quickly as humanly possible. And it is up and humming at all 9 of our school sites. So we will come back and share that information with you. You'll feel really proud about the work that we're doing with our students.
I think that having sat here for years.
Sharon will say how many
Yeah,
Yeah.
not quite decades, but for a while. This is the first time the intervention piece has been defined for me.
Oh.
And I feel that there's actually the ability to move that needle. So I'm actually feeling better about things. Certainly, we've always walked the door and say, well, this is what happened last spring, and we're trying to figure out how to engage and do.
Yeah.
We are engaged in doing. So that to me, I'd like to your point, see,
Yeah,
get an update on that and see how it works out. And then just to sort of way back to Leonard, when you're coming up with those educators that left us below standard. I think one of the things the high school has always done exceptionally well is work with the children who are struggling. They have programs in place. As long as they want to identify, they have really good scaffolding around those children to make sure they come out. They will never be coming out there brilliant in whatever we want to be brilliant in, but they will be coming very close to grade level to the door in the core subject matter. So I think that's the one, as they catch children coming across, I think that's something they've always done. And then they engage the students. My kids both did help. They sat with kids in classes,
tutors, yeah.
tutored, and they did small group things. They've got stuff at the high school level that I would like to see maybe for my kids as well. And kids that are really doing really well, they're reaching out, but they do really good at supporting those kids. I thought I understand the concern, but I feel good if they're going to our high schools that they catch them, they Yeah, I definitely like to see how the intervention systems are working.
Yep.
It's-
Beth, one final comment. I will, I do agree that virtual learning is much less effective than in-person learning. And our experience with virtual charter schools, for instance, has been basically they're a total disaster. And so to come up with something that essentially we were doing virtual schools, to come up with something that's as good as this is actually college school. When I was looking at it, it was from the point of view, sort of absolute point of view, that we still have some work to do.
Oh,
Sure.
and no doubt, we have work to do, and I would agree. And it's happening, and it's happening. I think you'll be really excited to see what's happening in the intervention. And honestly, Vladimir, as I look at this down the road, what we're doing right now gets us so we don't have 9 kids. Understand? We have to start, and we have to do it. And hopefully we are at the place where there are no 9 kids that go to the high school. There's 3 or more years below. That's the goal.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Any other comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate how great it was to see this data pulled out by the dispatcher groups, by the groups, and also hearing that the interventions are going on. And was going to ask that we have the data for the fall and see where we're at, and that's already in the works, so I'm excited about that. This is exciting how early we are through this. And so it gives me hope. Now it's like, why don't we do this every year? When do we get CAS data really late, don't we?
Yeah.
So we
Yeah,
may want to do our
CAS
own.
Yeah, CASP data isn't particularly
Yeah.
useful for this purpose.
Yeah, we may want to be continuing doing stuff like this in order to have those interventions early. But I'll leave that to the experts.
Well, I am always continuously proud of this school district and humbled to be sitting up here supporting you guys. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ooh, okay. Alrighty. Next, we're on to our elementary and secondary school emergency relief plan.
Press clicker. Thank you. All
Take it
right.
away.
Tonight, we are here hopefully with our last plan, but who knows? Tonight, we're here to talk about the elementary and secondary school emergency relief number 3 plan that needs to go to the county before the end of October. So ESSER 3 is one of the buckets of funds that came from the American Rescue Plan Act. And it works in conjunction with our extended learning opportunity grant that my timeline expanded learning. Oh yeah, not extended, expanded learning opportunity grant and our LCAP that you have previously approved. So this is an additional pot of money that is really to address needs around the pandemic, but has a little bit more wide-ranging uses for the funds. So we'll talk a little bit about that. You should have received a like the full plan in addition, so you could see the full plan, but elements of the plan include community engagement. So we were allowed to use the input that we solicited from our stakeholder groups around the LCAP and around the ELO grant. But in addition to that, we did a survey for this fall. We actually had 175 people respond to our survey, which is so great. Those are really good numbers. DLAC last week, which is one of our district English Learner Advisory Council, to get some input from them. So the plan itself talks about that community engagement, and then it goes into the actions and expenditures like a little mini LCAP. And so the 3 areas where we can use these funds are off to the right there. It's around making sure that school is in person and safe, addressing the impact of lost instructional time, and then this wide open bucket of use of any remaining funds related to other plans you may have had that were impacted by COVID. So it's kind of an interesting trio of, yeah. And then the last part of the plan, which is actually a kind of a new piece of the plan, which I like, is this idea that whatever your plan is, ensuring that those interventions are actually assessing student needs. That's, you know, that's actually the good piece. So for LASD, compared to other funds that we've received this year to support COVID, it was relatively small, so just over $693,000. And when you look at those three buckets there, you can see working with Randy, listening to our stakeholder input, understanding where our other buckets of money have been allocated to and planned for. You can see how we broke it down into those three areas. And more specifically, if you don't mind, more specifically, for the safe in-person learning, we really allocated quite a bit of these funds to help support a lot of the HVAC, all of these lovely air filters that have been purchased and put into all of our classrooms and spaces across our campuses, which is right in line. So part of this plan, and we have to show how it is also aligned to other plans. So our LCAP Goal 1, Action 1 is all about having safe, workable learning conditions for schools facility-wise. The impact of lost instructional time, a lot of our extended learning opportunity grant really went specifically to this bucket. So it was, what else do we need type of thing. So we're looking at increasing our purchasing of math intervention. We were able to purchase a little bit, but it would be great for all of our school sites to have access to that intervention curriculum for math. We want to continue to provide summer school for more students, assuming that that's going to be a need this coming school year. And then we really want to make sure that our students have access, and if we need an increase in hours or staffing or capacity to support mental health and behavior needs at our school sites. And then lastly, kind of those additional actions, we really know that technology access and keeping and upgrading our technology is so important to make sure that all of our schools and students have what they need to learn. Got a little bit of an allocation there as well. Looking at how our specific actions will be progress monitored, you can see there. Really talking about, you know, our math intervention curriculum actually has an embedded progress monitoring tool there. Summer school, we've decided after this round that we're going to be very specific in how we make sure that we are appropriately progress monitoring school students who attend summer school. And then we've just started collecting some data more formally around our mental health and behavior needs across our school sites. So our school psychologists and our labs team, Los Altos Behavior Services, yes, are now really more closely looking at their caseloads. And even since the start of the school year, I believe we've added some hours as they've been indicated and needed across our sites. So that is kind of a snapshot of the plan. You saw the whole plan as an attachment. And tonight, I'm really just recommending that you approve the plan, but I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you. Members of the public, if you want to make public comment, please start raising your hands. Are there any clarifying questions from the board? Okay. Oh, no questions?
No.
Okay. Are there any requests for public comment? I do not see any. I'm going to close. There is? Nope. Okay, excellent. Okay, in that case, public comment is closed. Board members, would any of you like to provide comment on this agenda item before we vote? Yes.
I just want to start with at the DLAC meeting. There's some good conversation there, so I just wanted to surface one piece of it for the board as a whole. Because when we're talking about lost instructional time, that there's some potential with cases in quarantining for lost instructional time this year. So I had asked about that at DLAC, and Sandra, I don't know if you want to repeat what you said about
Yeah, so,
allocating some money, even though not necessarily under this pot of money, but
correct.
other money.
Yeah, I think we already have allocated money where that could from our extended learning opportunity grant where that could fall under. But we'll be talking to principals tomorrow that if we have students who we believe, who do have to quarantine for an extended period of time, which is very few students, but if don't have the support at home, and we saw this in the springtime where we had students identified to come onto campus through our LASD Plus program, that how can we provide some support if a student did need to be out for 2 weeks and pay a classified person or pay that teacher some additional hours to support that student to do that distance learning to make sure that they remain on track. And the good news is with all of our pool testing and response testing, fewer and fewer students do have to quarantine for that period of time. That's something that we will put on the agenda for tomorrow.
I just wanted to bring that up because unfortunately now that almost nobody is distance learning, there's
Right.
been less
Yeah, the
support for those
system
students
is
who
not
have
in
to be at
place.
home, who don't have,
Right.
it's as if they got a bad flu for 2 weeks and they have to deal with that. So I'm very glad that we're putting supports in place to make sure that those students don't just languish at home for a couple of weeks. Thank you.
I actually forgot if I opened up for public comments.
You did.
I did, okay, thank you, sorry. Okay, if there's no other comments, may I please have a motion to approve the elementary and secondary school emergency relief plan 3 as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Jessica. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Is there any further board discussion? Okay. Motion to approve the elementary and secondary school emergency relief plan 3 as presented was made by Jessica and seconded by Steve. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have 2 resolutions of appreciation as action items tonight. Both recognize people who have provided great service to the district by their participation on important board advisory committees. The first is resolution number 21-22/0606. Appreciation for outstanding service on the Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance. Randy, can you please provide additional background?
Sure. Tonight, this resolution recognizes Pat Corin. It's indicated in the resolution itself. You may want to at least part of the resolution at the end, but just for the public, because I know the board knows this, background, Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance reports to the community annually a report card regarding our parcel tax expenditures. And they also give an annual report of findings and recommendations to the school board every year as one of your primary advisory committees. Pat served on that Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance for the last 16 years. She's been representing the Los Altos Teachers Association in that role. I would say she's probably maybe missed 1 or 2 meetings over that whole span of time. That's 8 to 9 meetings a year. 16 years, that's around 140 meetings that she's been attending. These are night meetings.
She probably rode her bicycle the most of
She
them.
probably did.
These are typically around 2 hours in length. You get no pay for attending these meetings. Plus, she does work on some of the subcommittees of that major committee. So she's been very active. Her contributions will be sorely missed. She's been a very even-keeled contributor, very insightful. She's been a voice for the teachers and probably all employees. That's been very helpful for the committee. I'm just going to say thank you, Pat. We'll miss you. And read part of the resolution for you. Take care.
the Los Altos School District Board of Trustees wishes to recognize block school teacher Pat Corin for her years of service on the district's Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance. I just wanted to add my thanks to Pat for her many, many years of service. I've overlapped with Pat on the CACF, and I've really enjoyed working with her and always appreciated her perspective, especially because I was quite the newbie on the committee. But this is a very important committee, and I don't think we can understate the how much support that committee gives to the board in terms of all of the deep analyses that they do. So very, very many thanks to Pat for all of her years of service. Board members, do you have any questions? Any public comment on this agenda item?
Yeah, maybe there she can have her opportunity.
Oh, does she?
Nope.
Right, public comment is now closed because I don't see any hands. Any further comment from board members? Okay, then may I please have a motion to approve resolution number 21/22-06, appreciation for outstanding service on the Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance as presented.
I enthusiastically so moved.
Thank you, Jessica. Do you have a second? Thank you, Steve. Any further board discussion? Okay, motion to approve resolution number 21/22-06, appreciation for outstanding service on the Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance as presented was made by Jessica and seconded by Steve. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I'm very happy. This motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much, Pat, and congratulations. The second is resolution number 21/22-07, appreciation for outstanding public service on the Measure N Citizens Oversight Committee. Los Altos School District Board of Trustees wishes to recognize 5 members of the district's Measure N Bond Oversight Committee. Randy, can you please give us more information?
Sure. Again, a very important advisory committee to the board, just for public's information. This is a bond oversight committee. It's called the Citizens Oversight Committee. It's a byproduct of our Measure N bond measure that was passed in November 2014. The Citizens Oversight Committee meets quarterly. It reviews bond expenditures for their appropriateness based on the language in the ballot measure. The committee group also reviews what's going on with the bond program. They review an annual audit and they make a final report to the school board every year. Because of Measure N passing in November 2014, the committee was formed once we had applications and the board took action to form the committee. They first met in April of 2015. These 5 gentlemen have been on that committee since its inception in April 2015. So this is the end of a 6-year term that they've had. It's actually 3 2-year terms, consecutive terms. State law mandates that you cannot be on one of these committees for more than 3 consecutive 2-year terms. So they've all turned out, all 5 of them. Otherwise, they would gladly stay on this committee. All of them have been active contributors to the discussions as well as the workings of the committee. 3 of them have even served as committee chair at one point or another during the 6-year period. I think finally I could speak for each of them in saying that they're a bit disappointed that they're leaving the committee because of being termed out. They've all been anxious to see actual construction going on in our bond program of one kind or another, either on the 10th site or elsewhere. And so again, that's a little bit of disappointment for them because they would have liked to be involved in something when the construction was happening. It's been a pleasure working with them, and I certainly will miss them and their contributions. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Michelle.
Just wanted to add my thanks to these gentlemen for their dedication and commitment to this very important committee. It is another committee that the board is fortunate to have that supports our work. And Jessica and I co-chair the Measure N bond campaign. And so this committee is
For
It's
baby.
also, it's our baby. So it's also, I was gonna say, it's also extra special, as is the CACF. It's, they're all extra
Yeah.
special. But, you know, Measure N was really important, and it's the reason why we can even consider having a 10th site. So I'd like to thank these gentlemen for their service.
Want me to mention their names?
Yes, please.
So I can do it off the top of my head here. So we have Sam Harding, Craig Jones, Mike Stanley, Matt Pear, and John Swan.
Oh,
They're all mentioned in the resolution.
wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Board members, do you have any clarifying comments, questions? Okay, members of the public, if any of you want to make public comment, please raise your hands. Seeing no hands raised, public comment is now closed. Any further comment, board members? Right.
Just one question, Randy. We are in the process of replacing these. Secretary.
Yeah, good question. I'm hunting for replacements. We cannot meet. Right now, we've down to 3 members, and we're gonna need at least 4 people to have a meeting in December when our next meeting is scheduled. I've actually got a lead on someone that I may be bringing to you as early as the next board meeting. There's an application process, there's an application form. You would have to approve that. And I put some feelers out for other candidates. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know. So there needs to be, just so you know, there's specific representation. And what we are missing is we're missing a senior organization representative and a business organization representative. The one lead I have right now is for a business organization representative. The other vacancies, backtrack a little bit. This committee is required to have at least 7 members. So we have 3 left after these 5 are leaving. One, we need a business organization and a senior organization, and then 2 at-large positions, which means they don't have to be affiliated with any organization. So any leads are welcome.
Excellent. Excellent. Any other comments? In that case, may I please have a motion to approve resolution number 21/22-07, appreciation for outstanding public service on the Measure N Citizens Oversight Committee as presented.
I'm enthusiastic.
Thank you, Jessica. May I have a second?
Second.
So
Any further board discussion? Okay. Motion to approve resolution number 21/22-07, appreciation for outstanding public service on the Measure N Citizens Oversight Committee as presented was made by Jessica and seconded by Steve. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. This motion passes unanimously, and congratulations. And thank you again for your service. On to the next one, board policy updates. I'm going to turn to you, Jeff.
Yes, I am happy to report we are almost caught up. And even been enjoying the weekend reading. But there are 6 policies here for your consideration. And again, just as a reminder, these are brought forward as a result of legislative change or judicial decisions that have occurred. Sometimes legislative action that has expired also affects these. So these 6 are here. What I want to point out that was here earlier, and that's BP 6170.1, which is transitional kindergarten. There is some, Brian, I think you had raised a question in there. There is some, we worked with our council, and there's language in here establishing an early primary program, which does allow us to, and then some companion language that does allow us to run a full day or longer day kindergarten or transitional kindergarten program. I do expect that this will have an update in the near future as well to take into account the change, the expansion of transitional kindergarten. So I think we'll see this policy again in the spring. We are preparing for that in our kindergarten information in evening planning. In fact, we just talked about that today, just about which of the dates that, you know, the transitional part kindergarten is expanding to include when we move into February birth dates for this next year. So, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Members of the public, please start raising your hands if you'd like to make public comment. Board members, any questions for Jeff? And I do not see any requests for public comment, so I'm going to close public comment. Any further comment on this agenda item? Like anything else you want to add to the clerk?
One minor thing.
Sorry.
6D, the CP 620, 5020. Should be parent/guardian.
Oh.
To the title.
Good one.
And then throughout the thing, we kind of refer to parent/guardian or
Yeah.
else. It's consistent.
Really good catch.
Yeah.
That's usually something I catch.
Yeah.
Any other comments on this? Okay, let's move on to board and administration comments. Sandra, would you like to start us off?
I have nothing for today.
Thanks. Randy?
Oh, I have some.
Oh.
A change. Next week, October 26th, I can't remember, that must be next week. The Mountain View City Council is slated to hear a staff report on the work on the 10th site master planning that we've been doing. Sharing basically what we shared with you a meeting or two ago regarding the likely location of the park, the city park. So that will be on that, should be on the council agenda on October 26th. And then the next night, October 27th, the Wednesday, is our October Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance meeting that evening at 7 o'clock. That's it.
That's it. Thank you, Randy. Jeff?
I don't have any other ads.
Vladimir?
I listened to the county board discussion of the 10th site. 10th site, what am I talking about? The county board approval of BCS's change in preferences. Yeah, that's all I'll say right now.
Well, our parents can certainly go and listen to it.
Yes.
Brian?
Yeah, so I attended the DLAC meeting last week, the first one this year, for sure. Very well attended, had lots of staff, both of the EL specialists, principals, actually had 3 parents, which was great. And one of the major consensus items was huge praise for Dolores Padilla, who is the family outreach coordinator we've hired, who is hit the ground running and is really going above and beyond and helping to reach out. So she was funded for this year through some of the emergency funding, but I think we need to figure out how to fund her going forward as we start figuring out the budget. It sounds like she's really filling a very strong need.
Make it so.
Yeah.
And one of the takeaways that I thought was just sort of interesting that I'll share is that I think her success is showing that translation is not always enough. That just because
yeah.
we translate documents and emails into Spanish or Mandarin or what have you, that doesn't mean that we've successfully reached the families who don't speak English. So something to keep in mind going forward.
Thank you. Jessica?
Nothing to add. I attended the SACBOE meeting also.
I have nothing else to add other than I also listened in on that meeting. I did meet with a couple of parents on Friday, so that was nice. I always enjoy going out and meeting our parents and talking to them. So any parents, please, if you would like to meet with any of us, drop us an email. And that's
Did
it.
you ask Steve?
I did. I asked him after you.
I was asleep.
Volunteered him. All right, with that, I'd like to adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Whoa.
Jeez.